We already have the first part for how we need this application to work. The user is able to enter in the amount of service or bill using the text box. The second piece of information we need is the percentage that the user wants to use to calculate the tip or gratuity. In this video, we will accomplish this by creating a number of buttons using the button component. We will lay these buttons out horizontally using a new stack panel component and adjust its layout definition. For each button, we'll add a unique instance name and customize the label for each one. If you're continuing on for the previous video, you're good to go. Just keep working with the project you have open. If not, open the Start project for this lesson from the exercise files. Let's start with the layout we want to use for the buttons. We've worked with the stack panel before, but that was always working vertically. This time, we want to use the horizontal orientation. First, let's create an empty tag under the header text. On my screen, we will add a new line under line number 53. So go ahead and add in a new stack panel, and it automatically creates our closing tag for that. And with the tags in place, we then want to customize the layout. To change this, we need to add the orientation attribute to the stack panel. So we'll go up to Stack Panel, add in Orientation, and we'll set this to Horizontal. Now when we add components between the tags, they'll go from left to right instead of from top to bottom. With the layout component set, we can now add the buttons. To do this, we need to create a new button component. Let's create an empty one to get started. So I'm going to position myself between the Stack Panel opening and closing tags, and then we'll put in Button. We'll use a self-closing tag for this one. If you look at the design view, you'll see there's a small white box under the tip percentage header. It is empty right now because we haven't added any content to it. But before we do that, let's give it a name. Just like before, we'll use the xName attribute to name the component. Let's call it %5. Add an xName %5. With the name set, now let's add some content into the button. Unlike the text block component, instead of using the text attribute, we use content. So let's add the content attribute and add a label for our button. We'll add in content, and we'll make the label 5 and then the % symbol. After you enter the text into the content attribute, you'll see the button update in the design view. Great, now that we have our first button, let's add another and see how they stack from left to right. Let's name this button %10 and enter 10% as the button content. With that created, you'll see again in the design view that the components are indeed stacking from left to right along a horizontal axis. So let's do this now for the rest of the buttons. We'll need to create one for 15%, 20%, and 25%, each with a corresponding instance name and content text. Now we have all the user input we need in our app laid out. So let's go back and see what we did. First, we created a new stack panel layout component, but instead of working with the default vertical layout, we changed the orientation attribute so we set it to horizontal. So now the contents stack from left to right. Within the stack panel, we added 5 button components. We gave each button a unique instance name using xName, and then added text into the buttons using the context attribute.